And hey, the worst part is I only have one class today, so that would have been really tragic. Thank you, Michaela, for saying that. All right. So, Roaring Twenties, political and cultural controversy. We're going to talk about the issues, but we're also going to just talk about the culture a little bit. So, let's get into that. Let's get ready to begin. Hold on, I gotta. All right. So, objective, again, internal migration, international migration, all that good stuff we've already been talking about, right? Key point one is up, all right? Key point one, by 1920, a majority of the United States population lived in urban centers, which offered new economic opportunities for women, international migrants, and internal migrants. I'll give you a quick 2 minutes for that key point. With that being said, somebody please in the chat tell me, what is an international migrant? What's another name for an international migrant? Because they got another name, a one-word name, better name, one that we should use more that they're immigrant. Yes, I didn't have to finish explaining. Good job. Yeah, immigrants, migrants. Immigrants are the same as international migrants, right? An immigrant or an international migrant is from another country, and a regular migrant or an internal migrant stays within the nation, right? About a minute and change on the clock. So the big thing here, again, by 1920, most people are living in cities and urban centers and the big population zones. And the ones that are outside of those cities tend to be, with cars and things of that nature. And they're still relatively close to them. Everybody's still close to cities. Cities are the new thing. They're the hot commodity. About 40 seconds on the clock. A little less than that, sorry, about 30 seconds on the clock. Make sure you have the key point, and then we are going to move forward. And that's about. Hopefully everybody's doing well today. Like I said, it's a Friday. Enjoy your Friday. Happy Friday to all. All right, guys, let's go ahead and move forward. Yeah, Brian, we all are, right? We're all ready for a break. Soon. So, women in the Roaring 20s. We're going to start with women today. So, a lot of changes for the role of women. This is the first time you're going to see the role of a woman change. Prior to this era, the role of a woman was the same, especially a middle class one, for years, right? Go home, make babies, get married, and make the home a haven of rest. Make the home a haven of rest, which is one of the most elaborate ways to say keep the house clean and comfy that I've ever heard of. But that was the traditional role of women, right? What the Roaring 20s and this urbanization and this, industrialization allows is that women now have opportunities to enter the workforce, new ones that they didn't have before. Nursing, teachers, unskilled labor jobs in factories. Side note, they made less at those jobs, but they had the opportunity. And on top of that, there's this cultural social movement that many of you guys have probably seen or heard of, known as the flapper movement, right? The flappers, the idea of some women cutting their hair short, doing things like smoking, drinking alcohol, and showing off their ankles, literally the ankles. That was the scandalous thing. Ankles are showing. I'm not kidding. The scandalous thing was ankles showing. Yes, oh my God, ankles, short hair. What? You're drinking alcohol, you're smoking cigarettes. That was like a big empowering movement for them. It was like a women's liberation movement in the 1920s. I don't mean to make light of the movement. I mean to make light of what society was before the movement, right? But it's really important, and it's women take it. But see, that's the thing, Roman. That's why it's so counterculture, right? Because of sin, because of Protestants, and because of being prim and proper, and like. But so part of what this movement is women taking hold of this. She showed her ankles. It's true though. Yeah, shoulders. It's but the point is that it's an empowering movement for women, right? It's women's liberation in the 20s. It's the first step towards like, hey, I can do this stuff too, right? Hey, if I want to show my ankles, I can. If I want to, it's the first step towards that stuff. The idea of, so prior to the 1920s, like you don't see women in a bar or in a restaurant like drinking alcohol, smoking cigarettes. That wasn't ladylike. Ladies didn't do that. Right? I know we're making jokes about the ankles, but that's a big part of it. It is. I don't want to take light from that. But just the idea of a group of women by themselves, going out, having a nice time, right? Having a party, doing something like that next to each shoulders. But it's what happens. It's what's going on. Yeah, history doesn't repeat itself, it rhymes. Always remember that. But it's what happens. It's an empowering movement, like I said. And it's a cultural thing. And you guys have probably seen like images of stuff like that. Great Gatsby stuff. That's what it is. No, yeah, I know, and it's fun to make fun of it, but it really was. Well, it's not even the cheating thing, guys. This was like young women that weren't married yet. It was still scandalous for young women that didn't have like husbands or kids or anything to go out, which is even more ridiculous, right? Are we watching Great Gatsby? No, we're not watching Great Gatsby. Stop asking that. But it's the same. It's the same. It's still scandalous. It was worth a shot. Fair enough. It's scandalous, right? So it's the idea of women being able to take hold of these things. Only, yeah. If you're at school, we're watching Great Gatsby. Yeah, let's do a Great Gatsby watch party. I'm kidding, guys. There's no Great Gatsby watch party. I'll give you a quick minute and a half to get that info down, and then we'll move forward. But again, they were known as flappers. And so that image, that 1920s lady, right, with the ankles showing, drinking booze and smoking cigarettes, it's empowerment in its own right. And again, can't stress enough, it's not just like, oh my God, married woman, you can't be going out. That's a thing. But it was even like unmarried women, young women that had no reason to not be going out, so to speak, right? Put on sunscreen. That's funny. And by the way, this is going to be a big deal with white women, but it's not going to be limited to white women. I got a picture of Harlem Renaissance flappers, and it's really cool to see. It's like a gender empowerment movement, and it's really cool to see because a lot of this stuff, right, doesn't always play nice with race, but the flapper movement does. It's kind of like it's like the antithesis of the zoot suit movement, where that is a very racial thing, and we'll talk about that in next week probably because it's during the 40s and it's during the Hispanic Civil Rights movement. This is a Hispanic thing, where like the zoot suit movement is very much about race. It's a racial thing, but this isn't. This is very much a women empowerment thing, and it's really cool. I think it's cool. And by the way, part of why this happens too is prohibition and speakeasies. About 20 seconds, then we'll move on. No. Oh God, that doesn't sound pleasant. All right. So immigrants. Let's talk about immigrants. Again, internal migrants spiked, attempted to peak again in the 1920s. What was the point where it's its highest? What's the point era where immigration is at its highest from Europe especially? What's the name of the era? The historical era in American history. Who can identify the era? It had a name. It's one of the few eras that I named every time we talked about. The Gilded Age, right? At the Gilded Age, immigration's at its peak. It's at its highest in the 1920s. And we already kind of talked about these things, but we're going to talk about them again with actual context this time. You're getting that second wave, right? That post-World War wave of people from Eastern and Southern Europe, dirty Slavs like Nunez was talking about, that people don't want in America, right? You've got Asian immigrants as well that people don't want in America. They're here for our jobs. They're here for polluting our white race. Like, what type of backlash is this called? This anti-immigrant, oh, I hate these immigrants, they're taking our jobs. Nativism, right? That's good. It's nativism, right? And nativism is still happening. It's a big backlash. We already talked about it. So remember those two acts you wrote down earlier, right? The Emergency Quota Act, 1921, the National Origins Act of 1924. Well, now you're going to get context to them. The 1921 Act is the one that reduces the number to 3% of the population according to the 1910 census. 3% of the population according to the 1910 census. That's the definition. The National Origins Act reduces the amount even further. So you just got to have those little definitions in. Again, this is stuff from like 2 lessons ago, but it's just important to note and actually have the instead of just the names, you have what they did. So again, I'll give you a quick 2 minutes for that. Right.
Were you laughing about the because it's funny. It's funny. It's like hey man, I'm just saying.
55 seconds, guys, and then we'll move on from this slide.
What are we covering today? Immigrants?
Political and cultural roaring 20s.
All right.
I got everybody in here, man. I got the Zoom right here. I got everybody.
But who actually tells you can understand cheese strap?
It's the time period. It's the cultural stuff. 35 seconds.
Let's strong. Project strength.
Oh yeah, guys, Zoom, in case you didn't know, guys that are in Zoom calls, that you've been all virtual this whole time. In the afternoon when I teach my in-person class, Mr. Nunez teaches with me. He's been doing it all week. It's been pretty great.
Oh, you have live class?
Yeah, I got both. We're doing testing schedule today.
Oh, sweet.
So I got everybody.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Mr. Nunez.
Keep my name out your mouth.
There you go. There you go. See? Is he so busy, Diego? Yes, he is. All right, guys, let's move forward. Oh, Zach's doing it. So, migration. What was the exoduster movement? Somebody tell me in the chat. Or here. Remember exoduster. What were exodusters? What were exodusters trying to do? Not a vacuum. Exodusters. Remember what they were trying to do. And if you don't remember, put don't remember in the chat. I don't care if you nuke it with a bunch of don't remembers. But you should kind of remember that term, exodusters. But who's moving west? Yes, it's somebody moving west, but who? Which group of people are moving west? Don't remember, don't remember, don't remember. African Americans are moving west from where? From where? From the south, right? So Southern blacks moving west. The Great Migration is part 2, which has Southern blacks moving towards what? Not out west, towards what? During the Great Migration. We talked about this yesterday. Where are they moving in the Great Migration? They're still leaving the South because the South sucks, right? Jim Crow, segregation, no fun. But where are they going instead of west? Instead of trying to find a homestead, where are they trying to go? Not the North. They're not going to a region. They're going to specific population centers. So where are they going? Cities, right? Urban centers like Chicago, like New York. And there's going to be a specific city in New York where they're all going to, called Harlem. So I'm going to give you a quick minute, and then we're going to get into the next key point, and we're going to talk about the Harlem Renaissance. Detroit a little bit, more Harlem. Detroit's a little later. Detroit's like near the end of the decade when you actually start getting manufacturing there. right, so where are we at? Harlem Shake, start with our Harlem Shake. All right, let's go ahead and move forward. All right, so key point 2 up on the, not board, virtual background thingy above me. 1920s created a unique and modern twist on culture, including the creation of jazz music, including the writings of the Lost Generation, and including an entire literary and cultural movement known as the Harlem Renaissance. So let's talk about all that stuff. I'll give you a quick 2 minutes to go, and then we'll move forward. All right, where are we at? About a little less than a minute left. Little less than a minute. That's funny. It's a little intense.
That might not so well different.
This has escalated slightly.
Yeah. There's only a 7 jokes. I know how
All right, let's go ahead and move forward then. The Harlem Renaissance. Again, I told you, flappers, the flapper movement is not limited to race. It is everybody doing it. It is a female empowerment movement. The Harlem Renaissance, revival of arts and intellectual pursuits among African Americans. It is not just and only a music thing. It is not just and only an art and painting thing. It is also literary. You've got the music of Duke Ellington and Louis Armstrong, who are still really, really popular among jazz enthusiasts, that revolutionized and created the genre of jazz music. Langston Hughes and Claude McKay put a voice to the Black experience in America. Some of the first and earliest writings of the African American experience, what it was like to be Black in America, was done during this time period. It is a super significant cultural movement. It's one of the first times, remember we talked about pop culture, right? And how it brings everybody together, but it shows you how you're different. This is one of the first examples of one of those like, hey, we're a little different here, getting its own type of pop culture, right? All of a sudden, the Black experience in America, they had a soundtrack, right? They had music they could listen to and be like, that's ours, right? They had people that they could point to and be like, that's, you know, that guy is representing us in a really awesome way, or that gal is representing, like, they have this for the first time, and it's truly revolutionary. It's really important. It's a really important point in U.S. history, and it happens in the 20s, and it maintains for a long time. Jazz hasn't gone away. There's still jazz clubs, right? There's still really important writings, like, you know, Langston Hughes and Claude McKay, still, their writing is still referenced today. It's really important. The paintings during this era are also really empowering, but I didn't really want to put any here because I thought photos would be better. This is Louis Armstrong, by the way, in the middle of a really crowded club. He was a trumpet player. He's what's up. He's legit. His jazz is still really good. With that being said, no, not everybody likes it, but you got to remember in the 1920s, it's like rock and roll, right? And even you can even say not everybody likes rock and roll, but it's new and it's like fast moving for the time, and it's unique. Again, it's hard to explain because again, it's not like there was a bunch of genres of music back then, right? It was a lot of classical and it was a lot of really, really basic things. Jazz is so impromptu. It's so lively. It's like perfect for being in a nightclub or in a speakeasy. And it's almost like the genre of music that it is like it's almost like if it was influenced by the era, even though it's kind of the opposite. You know what I mean? But it's really unique to the era, and it's really new at the time. A lot of people will argue that like the reason Elvis Presley got so famous is that he's copied what a bunch of Harlem Renaissance guys were doing, and he happened to be white, right? And he's doing the same moves those guys were doing, but he's white. I'm not going to get into that. I would argue that probably has a little less to do with it. It's a little more of just genre blending in general, because we still think genre blending is really cool, right? Old Town Road is rap and country put together, and people like it. I don't, but people do, right? Like people like genre blending. So I think it's a little more to that. But again, we're not here to talk about cultural genre blending stuff. But I'm pointing out this is a really big movement. It's really popular for the time, and it's really fast paced and new. If you listen to Louis Armstrong now, you're like, this doesn't slap, right? This doesn't slap, but it's really good music still if you like jazz. And at the time it did slap. At the time it was fast paced and new and club music. Two more BPM, but it is though. And some of it's faster, and like his trumpet play is really good. If you're ever bored, just look up like Louis Armstrong trumpet solos and you'll be like, wow. And half that stuff he made it up, by the way. That's what makes jazz so cool. It's really improvisational. It's a lot of just feeling the music out, right? Which is a thing you do at a concert, which is what jazz was for a really long time. So jazz is really cool. It's really influential. It's a really important time period. And again, you don't have to love jazz to realize and just understand the cultural significance it had in America. It's almost like America's own music genre, right? Everybody does jazz now, but jazz is created in Harlem, New York, by African Americans that were sick of not having something that was theirs. It's really awesome. You think the claiming movies thing is cool. Every country's got movies that are really important and really awesome. Very few countries can say that music genre, that's ours, and it's 100 years old and it's still just as popular to an extent. Maybe not with young people, but with different types of people, right? And it's really awesome. So again, about 2 minutes on the slide just to get the info because I talked through a lot of that. Yes, so a lot of it is that, so you wouldn't be wrong in some of that stuff. Just depends on how, again, it's up to interpretation. And I do not have the research done to make that interpretation. It's just one that is out there. About, where are we at? 45 seconds left on the clock. Thirty seconds. All right, let's go ahead and move forward. Let's talk about the lost generation. You got F. Scott Fitzgerald, Ernest Hemingway, and all of these great works of writing. These people are writing about pervasive materialism. What's materialism again? Do you guys remember? Put it in the chat. Yes, I remember. No, no clue. Don't remember. Materialism. If I'm going to criticize materialism, stuff, but what, like, yes, stuff, right? So like materialism is like, what's your relationship to stuff if you're materialistic? Wanting material things, right? Phones, money, gadgets. You love stuff, right? You just want to have stuff, fancy stuff, consumer goods. That's good. Yeah. Wanting all these consumer goods is being materialistic, right? And so these writers are criticizing or talking about materialism that they see in American culture and how they're kind of like, you gross materialism. And they're also talking about their experience in World War I, what they perceive as a waste of life and resources, which to be fair for America kind of was. And they're criticizing a lot of that stuff. And this is a really important time in literary history. And it's just worth mentioning, right? You got Ulysses, Great Gatsby. The reason we're having our Great Gatsby watch party here on school is because of this, right? That's where this stuff comes from. Great Gatsby, he is a World War I veteran that disappears, right? And comes back and he throws all the rich parties to meet the girl again, blah, 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 blah. That's Scott Fitzgerald, DiCaprio, what have you. But the point is that that's where this writing comes from. It comes from a generation of young writers that experienced the war, are experiencing American materialism, and have something to say about it, which is usually where a lot of great writing comes from. So I'll give you a quick minute and a half, and we'll move on. Information-wise, we are almost done. I'm giving you a short lesson today on Friday because Monday's lesson is going to be a doozy. Monday, we're going to talk about the Great Depression, and we're going to talk about the New Deal. And then we're going to start talking about World War II, the reboot, World War Part Dukes. No, that doesn't work. Part Dukes doesn't work. The Great Depression. Yeah, we are going to talk about the Great Depression too. That's Monday. Monday's topic. Was it really all that great? No, I guess it wasn't all that great. It was probably a bit of a bummer. You can thank Herbert Hoover for that one. I need to figure out how to get you all the digital flashcards for presidents. Is that what we can play presidential March Madness, but in May? Well, it's presidential May Madness, and it's like Kahoot, but it's better. And it's really fun, and it's like bracketing. I don't know if it'll work on Zoom, but it'll definitely work in person. I would lose. You may or you might not. Presidential March Madness or presidential May Madness is pretty fun. But I got to see if I can digitize like the little flashcards to get you guys to fill out, because it only works if you got the cards. Because then it's all about like remembering them. It's fun. Well, it's fun for me, which means, you know, it's super fun because it's cool. Between panic. Okay, so the difference between an economic panic and depression. This is technically Monday topic, but I will talk about it today. So what I'm going to do really quick, I'm going to need the people that are here in person to help me out with this. Yeah, like look on the Zoom and tell me if you can see the board behind me. So when you can't see the board yet.